Listen, Deadpool was not a good movie, and I hate you people who say I have to turn off my brain to enjoy it. Fuck y'all, okay? Okay? No, that wasn't nice. I'm gonna try again. All right. This movie is Love and Thunder, Deadpool edition, and I will not have y'all convince me otherwise. Thank you. I think that's better. That's much nicer. Hey y'all, it's your girl Nia. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, thank you for joining me. I like to talk about media and provide analysis when I can. But to all of my followers who are coming back, thank you for thinking that I'm cool enough to listen to for at minimum 30 minutes, right? But before I get started, I do want to say that I am sorry now for the video that you are about to see because I am really mad and y'all are gonna have to get an earful today. I try not to make videos that are like overtly negative or rage bait content, and I really sat on the decision to create this video because I am not here to try to appeal to the masses. I find it to be derivative at times to have to make those things for the sake of like clicks, and that's not why we're here, right? We want to have a good time. But if I hate something, I want to actually mean it, right? And unfortunately the shoe is really fitting for this video. So I have to be honest, and I will be, because we're friends, right? We're good. We're close. I have to be honest, y'all. I did not like Deadpool at all. Well, that's not all the way true. I did laugh sometimes, and I did enjoy some of like the overall concepts that it tried to touch on. But to be honest with you, as like a movie, it wasn't good. And I feel like we have to say it. If not me, then who? Right? Daddy Disney, you had some hits in the past. But I think I'm really checking out at this point because I feel as though I'm holding a higher standard for the studio than they are for themselves. And that's a shame because I feel like I have loved this studio for my whole life, right? But with a lot of its like recent releases, I find myself feeling like I'm supposed to feel like something that's like just out of my reach. Like I am getting watered down versions of the things that I actually liked in the past, and it's being sold back to me without me being aware. Like with each Marvel movie I feel less and less attached to the stories or the characters at this point. I think we have to get real writers back in the rooms and kick out the executives because y'all have done enough, okay? And I want the OGs back too, not just people who are gonna give me winks and nods to better times every like 10 minutes in the movie. Y'all are not gonna keep like, y'all are gonna keep pissing on me and telling me it's raining. And I fear that this just isn't a Marvel verse like issue, right? Or even solely like a Disney thing, but that's a different video for another time. So let me focus and y'all just go ahead and sit back and relax while I tell you why I did not enjoy this movie. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Listen, one of the reasons that I love Deadpool as a character was the fact that he was abrasive, he was chaotic, and he swore a lot, okay? I was young, and he was like Spider-Man in my brain. Please do not laugh. I was a child, so please don't judge me. But anywho, he cared about the people and like generally like doing the right thing, right? But most importantly, he was progressive, but he was inappropriate and he was witty. So I was all in on Deadpool, right? And I was happy to see a few years ago that they would be making a movie for him because I felt like the MCU needed someone to shake things up, have fun, loosen up a bit. And that is a job I felt like Deadpool would really deliver on. And mind you, I was right. I loved this movie, and though I do believe I am the barometer for what is good art, I was not the only one who thought so because, it became a thing of its own. Clearly, it really blew up, and audiences loved what Ryan Reynolds brought to the character, which was really just like himself, but who cared? It finally felt like he was casted correctly, right? And it was a hit. And I was really hopeful for the future of Deadpool 2. It was greenlit for another movie, and all was well with the world. But to be honest, I do not know why I thought this, because capitalism ruins everything. So I should have known that it would come for this too. It would come for my happiness. It always does. It really does. What is comedy anymore? I will have to check, but I believe that the first Deadpool was considered a comedy, and so was the second one. So it was no surprise that this one would be as well. I knew that sitting down, but what I did not know was that comedy now means childish. And let me explain what I mean by that. I go to the movie, I sit down, and we have Deadpool talking to a desecrated skeleton of Wolverine, which I admit was funny to see. I did laugh. I did haha out loud, right? Because it was funny to see him dug up like that. And I almost was tricked for like a couple of short minutes that this was going to be like a funny movie, right? But then they begin the intro, and I was stuck watching for 5 minutes Deadpool dance to Bye 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 by the Backstreet Boys. Now, this was exciting initially because, it's campy, but it wasn't like long before the gag got old and kind of boring. And if you think I'm over exaggerating, try and meditate for 5 minutes and you'll see how long 5 minutes really is, right? After like the initial excitement of hearing the song and watching him dance, the intro kind of like wore off, and I found myself wondering when we were going to move on. And I will not lie, unknowingly, this kind of set the tone for how the rest of this movie was going to go. Kind of like wondering when we were going to get on with it. But moving on, because that's nitpicky. Now, I swear I am not a prude or stuck up, but there are only so many ass and dick grabs I'm going to see before things really just do not garner or laugh for me anymore. I wish I was able to kind of like take a shot every time they ran the gag, because it would have made watching the movie easier. But it probably was for the best, because with the amount of times they speak or show in the first like 20 minutes, like these ass and dick grabs, I would be incapable of being able to walk out of the movie theater, let alone finish the movie without alcohol poisoning. Just in case you need a visual of how many times they used that joke. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. The jokes were kind of reminded me of like what every like 7th grade boy or like a stunted grown man would find like really, really funny. Anyone who has spent time with like teenage boys know like what I'm talking about. The students in my class would laugh at the most like asinine jokes that you hoped they would grow out of, but apparently like not here, because here I am in like a theater of people watching the joke for the 5th time in like 10 minutes being something lewd. And all I could really do is sigh, because even though the first Deadpool was not like a cinematic like masterpiece by any means, it had like good writing and a solid plot and a lot of like heart. And unlike that movie, I could tell that we were not about to get any of those things in this movie the more I watched it. And I would like to consider myself as someone who likes comedies. I even enjoy off-color humor at times. But one of my major issues with the movie was the fact that it felt like it wasn't trying to be a comedy for the age group it should have been focused on. And that's kind of weird. In the first movie, the jokes or the fourth wall breaks were at minimum clever, right? It was witty or used in a way that would like catch you by surprise. And when I think about my issues for this movie, it's that nothing was clever. They did not improve on the model, but instead like rested on their laurels to make things funny. Like they said, oh, you like fourth wall like breaks? No problem. We will break the shit out of every wall until everything you loved is gone, okay? Or you liked when we made that inappropriate dick joke? That inappropriate sex joke? Yeah, no problem. We will make every joke like this for you. No thinking involved. no batteries included, right? I felt like a lot of the like wall breaks were used in service of saying something inappropriate for shock value, and not because it was actually funny. I do not feel like I was in on the joke like in the last or the first movie, right? But that now I am the joke because here I am spending money on this movie. Like, I'm no conservative. I'm not a conservative, babe. I am here watching Deadpool, so I know what this is. Or was. But regardless, I would like something more than shock in place of jokes. And for a movie to move away from the layered jokes that they used to have to make this makes me wonder if it's kind of like for me, for my audience, right? Age group maybe anymore. And you really don't have to like take my word for it. I found a video from Brian McNulty that is a writer. So here it is to kind of back me up.
Works. First type of bad comic relief is bathos in big moments. Bathos is an abrupt shift from a serious tone to a comical one. Usually you'll have a sincere setup that promises a meaningful payoff, but instead the payoff is a cheap joke. It subverts expectations, it creates this jarring emotional shift, and it undercuts sincere emotion. And though bathos can work in smaller, less important moments, it should be avoided in significant.
Okay. The comedic tone of this movie just does not fit with the themes they are trying to depict. On one hand, they want me to feel deeply about Wolverine struggling with abandoning the X-Men, but the movie does not take themselves seriously. It wants to be off-putting and deep at like the same time, and it just really can't, right? It's not landing. It doesn't really work that way. So I walk away thinking I watched like an Adam Sandler movie, and that isn't really a dig at people who love Adam Sandler, or maybe kind of, but that just wasn't what I signed up for this movie, right? Like, watch this really fast.
For it to work, we need to subject you to extreme stress. You've heard the whole make an omelette break some eggs bit, right? But I'm about to hurt you, Wade. I was a patient here once myself, you know.
Thank you. You have something in your teeth.
Did y'all see that scene? Do you feel the complexity and the layers of what's going on? You can tell that he is using his humor to like cope with the predicament that he's in, but with the situation he's in, coupled with the reality that he might be doomed, it like feels heavy. You feel something here. The tone is consistent with the story that they are trying to tell, while still keeping true to who Wade is. He is funny, right? In the most inappropriate times, but it's deep at the same time. And I'm going to be bringing up the first movie a lot because I feel like it's the most fair to compare this movie to itself. The reason why the comedy works there is because of the movie's overall tone. It's gritty, it's moody, and the comedy matches that style. The jokes are a reflection of his attitude and how grim sometimes his situations are, to make light of like the real shitty parts that he's found himself in, to make us, the audience, feel sympathetic for his character who is trying to make the best out of his circumstances. To this day, I still feel for the way that I watch in that first movie, but Deadpool 3, I don't I don't know. This one kind of felt empty. The jokes feel surface level and disconnected from the plot and not grounded to anything. But speaking of plots, that was so corny. Okay, so even though some of the comedy was not for the girl, I just knew that going into the movie, the plot would make some type of sense. Deadpool was like finally being added to like the official MCU, so I just knew that whatever they were going to do was going to make sense to the overall universe, if nothing else. I just knew that at minimum that they would get that right. Like the last two, like I said, were really good, solid, easy to follow, and made sense for the characters and their journeys, right? Very grounded, even for it to be a superhero movie. But Even as someone who has seen the majority of the MCU properties, I won't lie, something either didn't make sense or I just wasn't following very well. So let me see if I can kind of describe what this movie is about, right? Very quickly. So, Deadpool, after the last movie, unfortunately has broken up with his girlfriend, or she, rather him. I don't know. And now he is trying to find meaning in his life or be meaningful in some type of way. So he tries to join the Avengers, but that doesn't work. So he becomes depressed and settles as a car salesman, which, okay. Anyway, he is approached by our villain number one, Mr. Paradox, who works for the Time Variant Association, or the TVA for short. He tells Deadpool that his timeline is going to fall apart because the Wolverine in that timeline died, and he was an anchor being. Which basically means that he needs to stay alive in order for it all to stay together and run smoothly. He's the glue, right? And because of this worldly departure, Deadpool's timeline will eventually disappear. So Mr. Paradox wants Deadpool to help him by making this happen faster, and then he can matter. Right? Now, Deadpool hears this and clearly does not agree and tries to find another Wolverine that can replace the one that has passed away in his timeline. However, the Wolverine that he finds is a drunk and can barely hold himself together. Now, Mr. Paradox tells him that this is not going to work because the anchor being cannot be replaced and becomes really upset that Deadpool won't help him. So he sends the duo to the Void and heads to Deadpool's timeline to get ready to destroy it. Now, the Void is a lot to kind of explain, so if you haven't seen it or you haven't spent too much of your life watching this stuff like I did, I will add a description up there for you all. But moving on, this is where Wolverine and Deadpool run into Cassandra Nova. She is our villain number 2. She is also Professor X's twin sister, who is apparently more powerful than anything we've seen him ever do, which is kind of crazy, right? She tries to kill Deadpool and Wolverine, but they escape and they run into what I like to call the cameo slideshow. So we have Blade, Gambit, Mini Wolverine, and Electrica with our group. They all decide that they are tired of being stuck in the Void and Cassandra being a bully, so they make the decision to team up and go stop her to get back home. And they do this. They are successful by stopping Cassandra with reminding her of the brother, like, that she's never spent time with. But hey, she's emotional, she feels it, so she stops. But regardless, our duo makes it way back to our Deadpool's main timeline to try and stop Mr. Paradox. However, Cassandra is pissed after she finds out that Mr. Paradox was all up in her business trying to cut deals with the people inside of the Void. So she follows Deadpool and Wolverine back to their timeline and brings every reject Deadpool with her to try to fight as a distraction. She steals the device that Mr. Paradox is using to destroy this current timeline, and she now wants to destroy all the other timelines and leave nothing else but the Void for her to control. But Deadpool and Wolverine obviously are like, absolutely not, so they team up to destroy it and they are successful, and then they all go back to his apartment and they have family dinner. The end. Now I'm gonna pause a little bit, and I want you all to take some time to take in some of the things that I've shared for you, but for those of you who saw it, I also want you to kind of think back and try and answer some of the questions that I am now going to pose to you about this film. For starters, why would Deadpool of all people feel like he does not matter? This movie feels like it's trying to convince me that he is doing this for his ex so that they could be together or prove something to her rather. But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't she say that at the end that she felt like he kind of stopped trying after getting turned down from the Avengers, and she kind of wanted him to get back to being himself? Then he kind of saw himself out of the relationship. And if this is the case, I won't lie, this is either a really bad plot concept or bad writing in general, because the whole reason for this wacky movie is for her or his love for his family rather, but they are barely relevant really in this film. So I was left a little confused. And this annoys me because I feel like the movie is hoping they have done enough to make you remember the feelings that you have for the characters that he's like risking it all for. But it's been years since the movie that precedes this one. So like, why be lazy? And not every person is going to be like that die-hard fan that rewatches all the movies right before they come out. So most people barely remember who these people are, and you have to keep up the lore if you want to have them continue to care, right? Like, I know he cared about his girlfriend, and their breakup, but the breakup happens off screen along with whatever he was dealing with, and we do not get to witness or be a part of it. So it just feels hollow. It is shown and mentioned so quickly that I am barely able to take in the weight of what he's like experiencing. You wanted to make sure you pointed out how important his relationship was to Deadpool, but then paid it dust moving forward. So I'm not sure why I am supposed to care. Right? I was reading a few Reddits trying to wrap my head around this movie, and someone brought up a point that, Deadpool struggles with clinical depression, and that's why he's struggling or was struggling in their relationship. But I have a problem with this as well because it forces the audience to do the movie's work for them, to fill in the blanks and not in a good way. The film writers don't really show us this stuff that's happening, and we really don't address any of it when they do give us some insight. So I legitimately am left feeling like they just needed a reason for him to want to save the world again. But this also tells me that they don't really understand the character, because why wouldn't he do that anyway, especially if it serves his own personal interests, right? Like, he is an anti-hero. He's saved the world for people he's loved before. That's what the first couple of movies were about. He didn't need like a contrived breakup story for that. He can be an ass at times, but when would he have not saved the world? He was trying to be an Avenger. It just does not fit the character that I have gotten to know over the years for either of them, really. And I can tell it is supposed to add some emotional weight to the story. But to be honest, I left the movie feeling like I had more questions than I did answers, and that's not really great. Next question. What was the purpose of our villain number one? I was failing to understand or even maybe believe what Mr. Paradox's motivations were in this movie. I get the timelines would eventually eat itself, and he felt like it would have taken too much time, but like, so I didn't understand the importance for him to get rid of the timelines and the urgency that he was like acting in. Like, the relationship plot, this one also kind of rings hollow to me as well. Like, listen to my man Braden McNulty one more time, so you can become informed on what like a good plot looks like.
Third type of bad plot is the bare bones plot. This is a thin, undercooked plot that doesn't have much to offer. It's usually straightforward and predictable, and it misses opportunities to explore ideas. It may lack character development, and it often has filler segments to pad the story's runtime.
Thank you, Brandon. Like, what are Mr. Paradox's personal motivations for wanting this done? Did he think he would get a promotion or eventually take over the TVA? Did he think that it was taking up too much space, like in the universe or the timelines? Did he see like the effects of what like taking too long to prune a timeline would do? Like, I feel like we had a good I don't feel like we had a good reason, to have this character exist, let alone be like one of the main villains of all things. His motivations were like seemingly thin and like really undercooked. Like Brandon mentions, we never spend any real time with this character, so we don't really know what he's doing or why he's doing it. We never explore what this could mean for him, for the timelines, or like, to be honest, even know how it would affect anyone outside of like Deadpool. And I am aware that he is like the main character, but I already spoke on how this does not really carry any emotional weight. So we're given like a real formulaic villain, which is fortunate, just to like move us forward or towards what they really wanted to show us, which was like 10 minutes of fight scenes. But since we're talking about like bad villains, Miss Cassandra Nova, honey, please step to the front. Like, can you explain to us what your purpose was, young lady? You were the big bad of the void, but what... like, our main characters were tasked with trying to defeat her, but she was almost useless. I saw this lady turn someone into a puddle of matter in the movie, but not only are our main characters able to escape, but they are able to defeat her like in a matter of minutes with like no casualties, almost, with like the amount of power she's supposed to have. I felt like they barely used it against the people that mattered. They defeated her and her team so easily. I actually rolled my eyes in the movie because her whole plot could have been used to spend time deepening like our main character development, or at minimum like their relationships with one another. I have noticed in general Marvel has like a hard time using their more powerful characters. They are usually injured or defeated in ways that really don't serve anybody but Marvel to say, hey, look, we use them, but they're gone just as fast. And this is my mini rant, but I wish they would and stop like introducing characters that are like the most powerful in the universe just to say like, oh wait, but not as powerful as our main guy. Oftentimes they're like taken out by like luck or like some crazy amazing coincidence, and it feels like a waste of the character, and quite frankly like also a waste of my time. I don't know why they needed her for this movie other than to introduce the like slideshow of cameos that they had like prepared. She was used so carelessly, and it frustrates me because they didn't have to butcher this character to provide our main characters with like another obstacle. The void was scary enough without her ruling over it. It's hard enough to get out of the void without the introduction of one of like Marvel's most like powerful characters that they possess, but you could almost like remove her completely and still have a really cohesive story if they wanted to. So I again kind of asked, baby girl, like, why are you also here? I don't think our villains were used very well. That's a stinker. Okay, next question. After the super save, like the timelines from being destroyed, what's gonna happen now? At the beginning of the movie, Mr. Paradox presents us with, the major conflict that Deadpool's current timeline was going to be destroyed. Okay, so what's going to happen to all of that now? Like, I'm not sure. But did they save all the other timelines and somehow also save their own? And if that's the case, does that mean the whole like anchor thing is bullshit now? Because they end the movie with everybody sitting at the dinner table happy and all that, but like, isn't their timeline still gonna be like erased? Like, it's still going to shit, right? Like, I don't think that it was very clear how this would end for everybody after the machine was destroyed, because the machine was really never like the main point of the conflict. It was the fact that the timeline was going to be erased regardless, really, of Paradox's intervention. So, does that mean like that no longer matters now that everybody's at the dinner table and they're really happy? Like, did the power of friendship cure the timeline? Because they focus so much, I think, like on the fight scenes in the movie, that they tried to wrap up the end as like quickly and like as neatly as they possibly could, but unfortunately it was really sloppy. I'm not sure how this happened, but the plots for this movie really lacked like a lot of substance and meaningful development or even consequences. But we'll, I guess, like talk about that a little bit more when we talk about character development. But before we do move on to that, baby Wolverine, how did you get there? How did they get anybody out of the void? Y'all, like, some of the stuff just wasn't making any sense. I like Deadpool, y'all, I swear I do. And I like Marvel too, but we have to kind of like hold these people accountable for like the shit they're giving us, because what is this big ass hole in the story that they left? And if I'm missing something, please in the comments let me know. But guys, like, I'm almost begging. I don't know what I'm taking in and I'm being left with, and I don't know if we should be letting this slide. Like, let me take a deep breath because I want to nitpick some more, but for the sake of this video actually making a point, I'm going to move on. All right. One of the things that irked me the most about this movie is the feeling that none of our characters grew in any real way, or if they did, it was extremely superficial. When I think about these characters and the journeys that they made, especially Wolverine, I don't feel like anything they experienced or went through really changed or affected them in any way. From start to finish, there were no real surprises or development that made us look at the characters differently, or not even just differently, just like what happened to y'all. Like, Deadpool traveled through the multiverse, worked with multiple different people, and yet I feel like he is the same guy we were introduced to at the beginning of the movie. Since the movie really leaned into making this more of a comedy, he joked around more than, he took things seriously, and it made whatever moments that were supposed to be really meaningful fall short. I also think the pacing for this movie was really all over the place, and that contributed to the character development being lackluster. We spent so much time laughing at the different Wolverines in the characters, multiple fight scenes and all that jazz, that the writers had to kind of rush everything else. And after watching the movie, I can't really tell you what any of the characters really learned. For example, what did Deadpool take away from his relationship with Wolverine? What did he learn in regards to the people he was saving? Did he become more compassionate? Did he recognize his worth and realize he already mattered? What exactly did he take away from this movie? And if you don't think that he was supposed to take anything away, I would ask you to ask yourself, why not? Part of what makes the first movie great is the fact that Deadpool takes something away from his experiences. He learns that he probably shouldn't have put his trust in questionable people or tried to control the outcome of his life. And the people who, cared about him would have stayed down with him regardless of his circumstances. And that the people in your life, and the time that you spend together is the most important. That in maximum effort. But for the life of me, I cannot pinpoint what this particular movie is trying to convey or make me feel. And that really is a loss on our end, because as the audience, this waters down this movie to just being an action movie and nothing else. And to be honest, those who love this character or even the genre in general should want more than that. These characters were originally created to be a vehicle for important life lessons or even political statements at times, and we've traded all that in for dick jokes and making things go boom. And this film really took some of the magic of the first film and its meta commentary, the fourth wall breaks and the off-color jokes, and made it its whole personality, which doesn't feel like a fresh take on the genre or the character. Providing us with nothing to really root for, and also not creating any real stakes for our characters to overcome. This makes Deadpool 3 a dull boy, right? Just sanitized for the hope of bringing in a broader audience, more money. Yeah. This movie also brought back so many amazing characters and did absolutely nothing with them. In this movie, they bring back Blade, they introduce a live action Gambit, they bring back baby Wolverine and Electrica. And outside of making people like me smile for a couple of minutes, I don't know what value that they brought. And I personally don't readily have an answer for that question either. Their fight scene was okay, but to be honest, I've seen Deadpool and Wolverine fight a few times by this point, so the action really kind of wore off for me. Felt very anticlimactic. And I know that feels like I'm nitpicking, and some might argue that we're not meant to provide, it's not meant to provide any deep commentary or not being that deep, but nostalgic characters are more than just callbacks or cameos. There's a reason why these people are significant, but the movie never really acknowledges why or explains how they uniquely impact the plot. I understand that side characters don't get that much screen time. They're side characters, but it makes the cast feel really bloated to have them added in here, because they don't really add anything meaningful or don't provide lessons, all that jazz. And I want to believe that the plan was made with good intention to add them, but I wonder if that intention was to tell a good story or to bring like the most like shock value. And I've already talked about why I struggle with Deadpool and his story, but Wolverine did not fare much better in my opinion either. I know that this is supposed to be a different Wolverine than the one that we grew up watching, but he didn't really grow either in this movie at all. And I'm not really convinced between the dynamic, between Deadpool and him. He wanted to risk his life at the end of the movie because we learn that he abandoned the X-Men in his universe, which is a little funny within itself. Since all he did was like go to the bar and get a drink after having an argument with the team, and I don't think he really abandoned him. He did what like my therapist tells me to do, which is like take a deep breath and like take a walk for a little while to get away from the issue. And like, what's so wrong with that? I don't know. But like, back to the movie, apparently this Wolverine gets drunk because he feels guilty that his team gets washed due to being like the weakest X-Men in all time apparently. And like, side note, like, this is my little rant, I know these can't be the X-Men that I know, because humans taking them out, really sneaking up on them, the X-Men, I know like movies require us to like suspend our sense of belief, but we have to be so effing for real. Like, that is just not happening. Anyway, just like we do not see Deadpool's depression play out, we do not see any like of the things that is bothering Wolverine really play out either. So nothing feels really impactful once he decides that he's going to show up and fight with a team, let alone when he goes to like sacrifice himself. Again, I asked the question, like, what did he also learn? That showing up is good? He already learned that over and over again in the last few X-Men movies. So giving me this plot again feels like filler more than anything else. And his friendship with, like, Deadpool is really hard to swallow as well, because I know that they're supposed to mirror each other. Like, they understand the pain or the regret that they carry, and they recognize their willingness to do things for the people that they love. But I wonder how well the movie thinks it does at executing this. We get a strong 10 minutes of them physically fighting each other, but way less than that of them having like real moments, intimate moments with each other. And arguably the most important scene, when Wolverine decides to show up and fight Cassandra, it's like given to baby Wolverine. I just honestly do not understand why, and the only explanation I can come up with is like nostalgia bait. Like, they didn't really plan for people, I think, to think really hard when watching this movie at all, and it really shows. It shows. I think the beautiful thing about building a fandom is watching how it grows over the years, right? Watching how the little details of the creator is like sprinkling as like a wink and a nod to the viewers does feel special. But what I do not like about this movie is that they are relying on the fans to do the heavy lifting to make this movie feel that way, instead of organically making something that will stand the test of time. If I wasn't a Marvel fan, I wouldn't understand half of the plot or the people who show up for those big moments, right? The reason why I keep bringing up Baby Wolverine is just because I forgot the character's actual name. And I think it's more funny that way, but because people do not know who she is. But the movie gives her one of the most heavy emotional moments for one of our titular characters, and that is egregious. Because the plot was so thin, they had to bring in others to help ground the story. But if I showed this to the average viewer, they wouldn't get it. And I think that's, not to be dramatic, but an injustice. To be honest with you, you not only have to be so chronically online to get the references and the side plots, but you also have to be almost 20 movies deep into the lore of this franchise to really have the time that they're expecting you to have. The movie insists upon itself. And all the movies that came before it without actually trying to be good on its own. And that's the problem. I was listening to a book review the other day, and the reviewer stated that she didn't like she didn't enjoy the book that she was reading because it wasn't well written. And she got a lot of backlash because the fans of the book tried to point out that it was a book that you did not have to think deeply about when reading it, that you could turn your brain off. And that's an issue on a whole nother level, personally. But their overall argument was the idea that it's not that deep, that you have to turn off your brain and that you will have a good time. But the reviewer came back to explain that the reason she did not like the book was not because you didn't have to think very hard about the plot or the characters or what have you, but because the story was not good due to the fact that you couldn't think too much about it in general. If you thought about the book in any real capacity, it starts to unravel within itself and it starts to fall apart. And that's how I feel about this movie. It's not that I'm incapable of turning my brain off and that's why I'm not having fun, but that as a whole, it wasn't well put together. I enjoy goofy, silly works, and I also enjoy action. I think I am a diverse human being, y'all. I have the capacity, but I don't think that this movie does. Like, watch this clip, and I'll be right back.
If there is no economic value behind being educated, behind being well-read and critical, why should people care? Capitalism wants us to succumb to this attitude that nothing is that deep, that we shouldn't be reflecting or analyzing things when our energy could be better spent elsewhere, such as consuming the newest romance novel or buying this new limited edition version of a fantasy series. But the far worse alternative would be a world without criticism, a world well-wishing people are now working to build for their bosses, one where monopolistic media conglomerates cater to our simplest desires and most superficial political awareness. Reading critically does not mean writing sprawling essays about the newest 250-page book that you finished reading. It can be as simple as reflecting on the themes of a book, wondering what makes this book tick or what makes it fail, and understanding exactly what, regardless of if you enjoyed it or not. It's reasonable to respond defensively to a criticism of media we love. After all, we feel a personal connection to it, something that makes us feel, something that makes us happy. It's also strange to believe that such information could ruin a specific piece of media, or rather, it suggests that the film or TV show is simple enough to be ruined by a piece of information, or otherwise, that this over-advertised piece of crap entertainment actually, in fact, sucks. Simple escapism and entertainment value is not the aim of art, though it might well be the goal of enormous media conglomerates. We just want to enjoy what we're consuming, right? But to critique something is, to me, the greatest form of adoration. To fully immerse yourself in the contents of a piece of media, to explore the intricacies it holds, is to love it further. Books and all forms of media have this unique power to enable us to feel things we've never gone through before. Don't you want to revel in that experience? When our media landscape is inextricable from capital, we move through the messaging and ideology of monopolized capitalism even as passive witness. To look is to love. It is the quality of being thoughtful that allows us to perceive the pain and pleasure in the sights and sounds around us. And so we need critique, we need criticism, and we need to want to be observant, careful, and patient. These things elevate culture and more importantly elevate discourse. Perhaps with time moving us away from a pithy liberal presentation of marketable representation and into a fluid, poetic, multifaceted cultural.
Now, there are going to be some of you who are not going to like this video and you are going to call me a hater, and that is okay. That's fine. You don't have to like or accept my critiques of this film, but that doesn't mean that I should not share them. We have to be okay with being a hater. We have to be okay with hearing how and why someone did not enjoy the works that you might have put out into the world. And it's hard, right, to take that in, for sure. It's much easier to be the critiquer, but it's almost necessary for growth. And though I personally am beginning to check out of the MCU, the comic and superhero fandom coming in behind me deserve better than what we are taking in as acceptable works of art. As audience members, I feel like we should be demanding more from our viewing experiences, or at least demanding our money back, because we are damn near paying $20 a ticket plus food and time to be served hot garbage, right? I won't get too much into like my capitalism rant today. But listen, if I'm going to be contributing to the financial gain of a conglomerate, I want something in return. And this movie just wasn't enough for me to keep investing forward, you know? I think people think this kind of fan service is nice. And I know the discourse surrounding the movie adaptations and how hard it is to see your favorite characters not get the story that they deserve. But I don't think swinging the pendulum in the opposite direction is the answer either. We sacrifice the opportunity to tell real stories when we get so full of ourselves that we are the only ones enjoying the content. Especially since this movie does not push the overall plot of the MCU or even our main character, right? Something that the early movies did that I think we're losing now is the chance to bring in and find a new audience while also paying homage to like OG fans. I used to be able to see these things with friends and family who may not have known what was going on like 100% of the time, but could still walk away believing that they watched a well-made, thought-out movie. I am so happy that I saw this movie alone, because I would have had to spend the next 2 hours trying to explain 80% of this movie, which is a shame. But I do have to thank Marvel for giving me the smelling salts, and for waking me up. I think Deadpool has helped me get off of the Marvel horse and to go touch some grass. I was deep in the Kool-Aid, and I was there for every premiere, every movie, because I believe that at the minimum it would try to honor our heroes, right? The characters that we loved. But to be honest, I think I'm going to wait for them to start coming out on streaming or get on the ship, if you catch my drift. Anyway, it feels like the people who enjoyed this movie were looking for more of an action movie than a story. And to you all, I actually hope that you did enjoy this movie and all of the next ones, because you're probably going to get this over and over until the end of time. So there you have that. Anywho, thank you all for staying. I don't know if you had a good time watching, but I appreciate you all nonetheless. Please do not be scared to tell me if you like this movie in the comments. I promise I won't even be mad, for real. But as always, please don't forget to like and share, and I will see you all next time. See ya. Mwah.